Today is 22nd of August, and we've come to the 43rd chapter of the Samyutta Nikaya, called the Asankhata Samyutta. Yesterday we read 2 suttas, now we come to the third, 43.3. The Buddha said, "Monks, I will teach you the unconditioned and the path leading to the unconditioned. Listen to that. And what, monks, is the unconditioned? The destruction of lust, the destruction of hatred, the destruction of delusion. This is called the unconditioned. And what, monks, is the path leading to the unconditioned? Concentration with thought directed and sustained. Concentration without thought directed, with thought sustained only. Concentration without thought directed and sustained. This is called the path leading to the unconditioned." So that's the end of the sutta. So here, concentration with thought directed and sustained, vitaka and vichara, is the first jhana. And then concentration without thought directed and sustained, that is the second jhana. So this one in between is between the first jhana and the second jhana. It is without thought directed. You only need to sustain it. These states of concentration, different teachers classify them differently, put them under different categories. So like in the Hinduism, they talk about 2 types of samadhi. Sabhikalpa samadhi and nirvikalpa samadhi. So I'm not sure what that is. Maybe it's rupa jhana and arupa jhana. So the Buddha says the path leading to the unconditioned are the jhanas. So in the Buddha's discourses, the jhanas are very important. 43.4. This part is the same. Monks, I will teach you the unconditioned and the path leading to the unconditioned. The unconditioned is the destruction of lust, hatred and delusion. And what, monks, is the path leading to the unconditioned? The emptiness concentration, the signless concentration, and the undirected concentration. This is called the path leading to the unconditioned. These 3 states of concentration in Pali is called Sunyata Samadhi. It's the emptiness concentration. Then Animita Samadhi is the signless concentration. And then the Apanihita Samadhi is the undirected or desireless concentration. Earlier we read that when a monk comes out of the state called the cessation of perception and feeling, which is also the cessation of consciousness, 3 contacts touch him. This emptiness contact, signless contact, and the undirected or desireless contact. So these concentrations are very high concentrations, very near to the cessation of perception and feeling. That's why it's called the path leading to the unconditioned. Because if you attain those states, you are very near to the unconditioned. And these 3 types of samadhi are not explained actually in the suttas. It's a very high state. So it's not... there's only a few suttas you meet these 3 concentrations. They seem to be grouped together. Next sutta is 43.5. Monks, I will teach you the unconditioned and the path leading to the unconditioned. The unconditioned is the destruction of lust, hatred and delusion. But, monks, is the path leading to the unconditioned. The 4 satipatthanas. This is called the path leading to the unconditioned. The 4 satipatthanas, I like to translate it as the 4 intense states of recollection. Sati, later we'll come to that chapter on Satipatthana, and then we explain more. So the 4 intense states of mindfulness is the path leading to the path leading to the unconditioned. I think for this chapter that's all I'm going to go through the suttas. Yeah. So we go to the next chapter, 44. Abyakata Samyutta, discourses on the undeclared. Abyakata is undeclared. It was not declared by the Buddha. 44.1. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. On that occasion, the nun Kema, while wandering on tour among the Kosalans, had taken up residence at Torana Vatu, between Savatthi and Saketa. And stop for a moment. This nun Kema must be the Buddha's nuns. She picked 2 as the top nuns. One is for wisdom, and this nun Kema, wisdom is supposed to be topmost among the nuns. The other one that the Buddha praised was Upalavana. Upalavana was the nun who was chief in psychic powers among all the nuns. So this Kema, one day she came to Torana Vatu between Savatthi and Saketa. Then King Pasenadi of Kosala, while travelling from Saketa to Savatthi, took up residence for one night in Torana Vatu between Saketa and Savatthi. Then King Pasenadi of Kosala addressed a man thus, "Go, good man, and find out whether there is any ascetic or Brahmin in Torana Vatu whom I could visit today." "Yes, sire," the man replied. But though he traversed the whole of Torana Vatu, he did not see any ascetic or Brahmin there whom King Pasenadi could visit. The man did see, however, the nun Kema, resident in Torana Vatu. So he approached King Pasenadi and said to him, "Sire, there is no ascetic or Brahmin in Torana Vatu whom your majesty could visit." This one maybe is not ascetic or Brahmin, it's ascetic or Brahmana. "But sire, there is the nun named Kema, a disciple of the Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha. Our good report concerning this revered lady has spread about thus. She is wise, competent, intelligent, learned, a splendid speaker, ingenious. Let your majesty visit her." Then King Pasenadi of Kosala approached the nun Kema, paid homage to her, sat down to one side and said to her, "How is it, revered lady? Does the Tathagata exist after death?" And she said, "Great King, Maharaja, the Blessed One has not declared this, that the Tathagata exists after death." Then, revered lady, does the Tathagata not exist after death? "Great King, the Blessed One has not declared this either. The Tathagata does not exist after death." "How is it then, revered lady? Does the Tathagata both exist and not exist after death?" "Great King, the Blessed One has not declared this. The Tathagata both exists and does not exist after death." Then, revered lady, does the Tathagata neither exist nor not exist after death? "Great King, the Blessed One has not declared this either. The Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death." And the king asked, "How is it, revered lady?" When asked, "How is it, revered lady? Does the Tathagata exist after death?" And when asked, "Does the Tathagata neither exist nor not exist after death?" etc. In each case you say, "Great King, the Blessed One has not declared this. What now, revered lady, is the cause and reason why this has not been declared by the Blessed One?" And she said, "Well then, great King, I will question you about this same matter. Answer as you see fit. What do you think, great King? Do you have an accountant or calculator or mathematician who can count the grains of sand in the river Ganges?" Saying thus, there are so many grains of sand, there are so many hundreds of grains of sand, or there are so many thousands of grains of sand, or there are so many hundreds of thousands of grains of sand. And the king said, no, revered lady. Then, great king, do you have an accountant or calculator or mathematician who can count the water in the great ocean thus? There are so many gallons of water, or there are so many hundreds of gallons of water, or there are so many thousands of gallons of water, or there are so many hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. No, revered lady. For what reason? Because the great ocean is deep, immeasurable, hard to fathom. And she said, so too, great king, that form by which one describing the Tathagata might describe him has been abandoned by the Tathagata, cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, obliterated so that it is no more subject to future arising. The Tathagata, great king, is liberated from reckoning in terms of form or body. He is deep, immeasurable, hard to fathom like the great ocean. The Tathagata exists after death does not apply. The Tathagata does not exist after death does not apply. The Tathagata both exists and does not exist after death does not apply. The Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death does not apply. Similarly, that feeling by which one describing the Tathagata might describe him, that perception, that volition, that consciousness by which one describing the Tathagata might describe him, has been abandoned by the Tathagata, cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, obliterated so that it is no more subject to future arising. The Tathagata, great king, is liberated from reckoning in terms of body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. He is deep, immeasurable, hard to fathom like the great ocean. The Tathagata exists after death does not apply. The Tathagata does not exist after death does not apply. The Tathagata both exists and does not exist after death does not apply. The Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death does not apply. Stop here for a moment. So, usually the Buddha's disciples, they will say that the Buddha cannot be described as the body or the feeling or perception or volition or consciousness. And then they go on to say that there is no Tathagata, that it is like he's here, and they say the Buddha is deep, immeasurable, hard to fathom like the great ocean. This is because when the Buddha has passed into Parinibbana, he has gone to the unconditioned. Nibbana is the unconditioned, and the unconditioned, the unborn, is hard to fathom, is deep, immeasurable. Then King Pasenadi of Kosala, having delighted and rejoiced in the non-Bhikkhema statement, rose from his seat, paid homage to her and departed, keeping her on his right. Then on a later occasion, King Pasenadi of Kosala approached the Blessed One. Having approached, he paid homage to the Blessed One and sat down to one side and said to him, "How is it, Venerable Sir, does the Tathagata exist after death?" And the Buddha said, "Great King, I have not declared this. The Tathagata exists after death." And similarly he asked, "Then does the Tathagata not exist after death?" And again the Buddha said, he has not declared this. And then he says, "Then does the Tathagata both exist and not exist after death?" And the Buddha said, "I have not declared this." And finally he says, "Then does the Tathagata neither exist nor not exist after death?" And the Buddha said, "Great King, I have not declared this either. The Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death." And the king asked, "How is this, Venerable Sir?" When asked, "How is it, Venerable Sir, does the Tathagata exist after death? Does the Tathagata not exist after death? Does the Tathagata both exist and not exist after death? Does the Tathagata neither exist nor not exist after death?" In each case you say, "Great King, I have not declared this." What now, Venerable Sir, is the cause and reason why this has not been declared by the Blessed One? And the Buddha said, well then, great king, I will question you about this same matter. Answer as you see fit. What do you think, great king? Do you have an accountant or calculator or mathematician who can count the grains of sand in the river Ganges thus? There are so many grains of sand, or so many hundreds, or so many thousands, or so many hundreds of thousands of grains of sand. And he said, no, Venerable Sir. And then the Buddha asked again, then great king, do you have an accountant or calculator or mathematician who can count the water in the great ocean thus? There are so many gallons of water in the ocean, or so many hundreds of gallons, or so many thousands of gallons, or so many hundreds of thousands of gallons of water in the ocean. And he said, no, Venerable Sir. For what reason? Because the great ocean is deep, immeasurable, hard to fathom. And the Buddha said, so too, the great king, that form by which one describing the Tathagata might describe him has been abandoned by the Tathagata, cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, obliterated, so there is no more subject to future arising. The Tathagata, great king, is liberated from reckoning in terms of body or form. He is deep, immeasurable, hard to fathom like the great ocean. The Tathagata exists after death does not apply. The Tathagata does not exist after death does not apply. The Tathagata both exists and does not exist after death does not apply. The Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death does not apply. Similarly, the feeling, perception, volition and consciousness by which one describing the Tathagata might describe the Tathagata might describe him has been abandoned by the Tathagata, cut off at the root, etc. Similarly, the Buddha said that the Tathagata is deep, immeasurable, hard to fathom. And then the king said, it is wonderful, Venerable Sir, it is amazing, Venerable Sir, how the meaning and phrasing of both teacher and disciple coincide and agree with each other and do not diverge. That is, in regard to the chief matter. On one occasion, Venerable Sir, I approached the nun Kema and asked her about this matter. The revered lady explained this matter to me in exactly the same terms and phrases that the Blessed One used. It is wonderful, Venerable Sir, it is amazing, Venerable Sir, how the meaning and the phrasing of both teacher and disciple coincide and agree with each other and do not diverge. That is, in regard to the chief matter. Now, Venerable Sir, we must go. We are busy and have much to do. And the Buddha said, then, great king, you may go at your own convenience. Then King Pasnadi of Kosala, having delighted and rejoiced in the Blessed One's statement, rose from his seat, paid homage to him, and departed, keeping him on his right. It's the end of the sutta. This is not the only sutta where the Buddha and his disciple say exactly the same thing. There's some other suttas also. Maybe it's because the Buddha can read his mind. So when he came to ask the Buddha this question, the Buddha already read his mind that this he had already asked the nun Kema before. So the Buddha purposely answered him exactly the same way. The next sutta is 44.2. This 44.2 is found at page 936. This sutta is in the Khanda Samyutta. And when we went through the Khanda Samyutta, I did not read this sutta, although it's quite good, because it's quite similar to the other suttas. So if I read too many of them, it will be boring for you. But now we can read it because it's quite good. On one occasion, this sutta is 44.2, is exactly the same as 22.86. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Vesali, in the great wood in the hall with the peaked roof. Now on that occasion, the Venerable Anuradha was dwelling in a forest hut not far from the Blessed One. Then a number of wanderers of other sects approached the Venerable Anuruddha and exchanged greetings with him. When they had concluded their greetings and cordial talk, sat down to one side and said to him, "Friend Anuruddha, when a Tathagata is describing a Tathagata, the highest type of person, the supreme person, the attainer of the supreme attainment, he describes him in terms of these four cases. The Tathagata exists after death, or the Tathagata does not exist after death, or the Tathagata both exists and does not exist after death, or the Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death." And this was said, the Venerable Anuruddha said to those wanderers, "Friends, when a Tathagata is describing a Tathagata, the highest type of person, the supreme person, the attainer of the supreme attainment, he describes him apart from these four cases. The Tathagata exists after death, or the Tathagata does not exist after death, or the Tathagata both exists and does not exist after death, or the Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death." When this was said, those wanderers said to the Venerable Anuruddha, "This monk must be newly ordained, not long gone forth, or if he is an elder, he must be an incompetent fool." And those wanderers of other sects, having denigrated the Venerable Anuruddha with the terms newly ordained and fool, rose from their seats and departed. Stop here for a moment. So these wanderers, they are not familiar with the Buddha's teachings. So they thought that the Buddha says that when describing the Tathagata, the Buddha, that the Buddha exists after death, or does not exist, or both exist and neither exists, etc. But this Anuruddha says that is not the case. The Buddha never used these four terms to describe the Buddha. So they thought this Venerable Anuruddha must be a fool or just gone forth. Then not long after those wanderers had left, it occurred to the Venerable Anuruddha, "If those wanderers of other sects should question me further, how should I answer if I am to state what has been said by the Blessed One, and not misrepresent him with what is contrary to fact? And how should I explain in accordance with the Dhamma, so that no reasonable consequence of my assertion would give grounds for criticism?" Then the Venerable Anuruddha approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side, and reported to the Blessed One everything that had happened, asking, "If those wanderers of other sects should question me further, how should I answer so that no reasonable consequence of my assertion would give grounds for criticism?" And the Buddha said, "What do you think, Anuruddha? Is body or form permanent or impermanent?" And he said, "Impermanent, Venerable Sir." "Is what is impermanent, suffering or happiness?" And he said, "Suffering, Venerable Sir." "Is what is impermanent, suffering, subject to change, fit to be regarded as this is mine, this I am, this is myself?" And he said, "No, Venerable Sir." Similarly, is feeling permanent or impermanent? Is perception, volition, consciousness permanent or impermanent? And he said, "Impermanent, Venerable Sir." "Is what is impermanent, suffering or happiness?" "Suffering, Venerable Sir." "Is what is impermanent, suffering and subject to change, fit to be regarded thus, this is mine, this I am, this is myself?" "No, Venerable Sir." Therefore, Anuruddha, any kind of body or form whatsoever, whether past, future or present, any feeling, any perception, any volition, any consciousness whatsoever, whether past, future or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all aggregates should be seen as they really are with correct wisdom thus, "This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself." Seeing thus, Anuruddha, the learned noble disciple experiences revulsion towards body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. Experiencing revulsion, he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, his mind is liberated. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge it is liberated. He understands, destroyed is birth. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. Then he asks, what do you think, Anuradha? Do you regard body as the Tathagata? Do you regard feeling, perception, volition, consciousness as the Tathagata? And he said, no, Venerable Sir. What do you think, Anuradha? Do you regard the Tathagata as in the body? He said, no, Venerable Sir. Do you regard the Tathagata as apart from body? No, Venerable Sir. Similarly, do you regard the Tathagata as feeling or perception or volition as consciousness? And he said, no, Venerable Sir. And do you regard the Tathagata as apart from these aggregates? No, Venerable Sir. What do you think, Anuradha? Do you regard body, feeling, perception, volition, consciousness taken together as the Tathagata? And he said, no, Venerable Sir. What do you think, Anuradha? Do you regard the Tathagata as one who is without body, without feeling, without perception, without volition, without consciousness? No, Venerable Sir. But Anuradha, when the Tathagata is not apprehended by you as real and actual here in this very life, is it fitting for you to declare, friends, when the Tathagata is describing a Tathagata, he describes him apart from these four cases. The Tathagata exists after death, does not exist. Both exist and does not exist. Neither exists nor does not exist. And said, no, Venerable Sir. Good, Anuradha. Formerly Anuradha and also now, I make known just suffering and the cessation of suffering. It's the end of the sutta. So here, first the Buddha goes through that standard questioning that the five aggregates are permanent or impermanent, and he says impermanent. And what is impermanent? Is suffering or happiness, and he says suffering. So what is impermanent, suffering, subject to change, should not be regarded as this is mine, this I am, this myself. Therefore, all aggregates whatsoever, past, present, future, should be seen as they really are with wisdom. This is not I, this is not mine, etc. And seeing thus, the noble disciple experiences revulsion or disenchantment with the five aggregates. Experiencing revulsion or disenchantment, he becomes dispassionate, and from dispassion becomes liberated. Then he asks, is the five aggregates, the Tathagata, the Buddha, as to say no. And then, do you regard the Tathagata as inside the five aggregates? And he said no. Do you regard the Tathagata as outside the five aggregates, apart from the five aggregates? Again he says no. And then do you regard the five aggregates together as the Tathagata? But since the five aggregates are impermanent, they cannot be the Tathagata. So he says no. And do you regard the Tathagata as one without the five aggregates? Again, no. So the Buddha says, in this very life, when the Tathagata is alive, something that is, even when the Buddha is alive, that which you can describe is the Buddha. There's no one thing that you can describe as the Buddha, because the five aggregates that are supposed to be the Buddha, they are all impermanent. So there's no single thing that you can point to as the Buddha. So that being the case, even in this very life, you cannot find such a thing that you can call the Buddha. It's just a flux of conditions. So how can you talk about him after death? So here, the Buddha goes into describing this, the Buddha or the Tathagata in terms of the 5 aggregates and tries to make a person see that the 5 aggregates is not the Buddha. And yet, you cannot say that the Buddha has no 5 aggregates. And then, if you analyze one by one, you find there's no one thing that you can call the Buddha, even when he is alive. So this is a different approach from the previous one. The previous sutta we read, the Buddha doesn't want to go into all this detail. He just says that the Tathagata is deep, unfathomable, hard to understand, hard to fathom. But this one is very different. This one goes into the 5 aggregates in detail. This type of suttas, reading it is one thing, but really seeing it, you need a very clear mind to see and become enlightened. But it is this type of suttas that the Buddha's disciples, after they attain the 4 jhanas, they listen to this type of suttas and actually become enlightened. So I would consider this type of suttas are very important. But a lot of Vipassana followers, they say the most important sutta that the Buddha taught is the Mahasatipatthana Sutta. But I never seen in the suttas anybody listen to the Satipatthana Sutta and became enlightened. Not a single person, Buddha's disciples, listened to the Satipatthana or the Mahasatipatthana Sutta and became enlightened. It is these type of suttas, when you analyze the aggregates in detail, that they become enlightened. So these type of suttas are much more important. The next sutta is 44.7. Then the wanderer Vachagota approached the Venerable Mahamoggallana and exchanged greetings with him. When they had concluded the greetings and cordial talk, he sat down to one side and said to the Venerable Mahamoggallana, "How is it, Master Moggallana? Is the world eternal?" "Vacha, the Blessed One has not declared this, the world is eternal." "Then, Master Moggallana, the world is not eternal." "Vacha, the Blessed One has not declared this either, the world is not eternal." "How is it then, Master Moggallana? Is the world finite?" "Vacha, the Blessed One has not declared this, the world is finite." "Then, Master Moggallana, is the world infinite?" "Vacha, the Blessed One has not declared this either, the world is infinite." "How is it then, Master Moggallana, are the soul and the body the same?" "Vacha, the Blessed One has not declared this, the soul and the body are the same." "Then, Master Moggallana, is the soul one thing, the body another?" "Vacha, the Blessed One has not declared this either, the soul is one thing, the body is another." "How is it, Master Moggallana, does the Tathagata exist after death?" "Vacha, the Blessed One has not declared this, the Tathagata exists after death." "Then, Master Moggallana, does the Tathagata not exist after death?" "Vacha, the Blessed One has not declared this either, the Tathagata does not exist after death." "How is it then, Master Moggallana, does the Tathagata both exist and not exist after death?" "Vacha, the Blessed One has not declared this either, the Tathagata both exists and does not exist after death." "Then, Master Moggallana, does the Tathagata neither exist nor not exist after death?" "Vacha, the Blessed One has not declared this either, the Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death." Stop here for a moment. So you see, ordinary worldlings, unlearned ordinary worldlings, they have a lot of views. These are the type of views that was very popular during the Buddha's days. All this type of speculation about the world, all because of the identity, the ego, the conceit. Once you have the view of a self, then you ask all these questions about the world and about yourself. And then he asks, "What, Master Moggallana, is the cause and reason when wanderers of other sects are asked such questions, they give such answers as, the world is eternal, the world is not eternal, or the world is finite, or the world is infinite, or the soul and the body are the same, or the soul is one thing, the body is another. or the Tathagata exists after death, or the Tathagata does not exist after death, or the Tathagata both exists and does not exist after death, or the Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death. And what is the cause and reason why the ascetic Gotama is asked such questions? He does not give such answers. And Venerable Moggallana said, Vacha, wanderers of other sects regard the I thus. This is mine, this I am, this is myself. Similarly, they regard the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind thus. This is mine, this I am, this is myself. Therefore, when the wanderers of other sects are asked such questions, they give such answers as the world is eternal, the world is not eternal, etc., etc. But Vacha, the Tathagata, Arahan, Sammasambuddha, regards the I thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Similarly, he regards the ear, nose, tongue, body and mind thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Therefore, when the Tathagata is asked such questions, he does not give such answers. Then the wanderer Vachagota rose from his seat and approached the Blessed One. He exchanged greetings with the Blessed One and said to him, How is it, good Gotama, is the world eternal? And he asked all the same questions as before. And the Buddha said, Vacha, I have not declared this either. The Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death. And Vacha asked, What, Master Gotama, is the cause and reason why, when wanderers of other sects are asked such questions, they give such answers as the world is eternal, the world is not eternal, etc.? And what is the cause and reason why, when the ascetic Gotama is asked such questions, he does not give such answers? And the Buddha said, Vacha, wanderers of other sects regard the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body and the mind thus. This is mine, this I am, this is myself. Therefore, when the wanderers of other sects are asked such questions, they give such answers as the world is eternal, the world is not eternal, the world is finite, the world is infinite, etc. But Vacha, the Tathagata, Arahan, Sammasambuddha, regards the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body and mind thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Therefore, when the Tathagata is asked such questions, he does not give such answers. And he said, It is wonderful, Master Gotama, it is amazing, Master Gotama, how the meaning and phrasing of both teacher and disciple coincide and agree with each other and do not diverge, that is, in regard to the chief matter. Just now, Master Gotama, I approached the ascetic Moggallana and asked him about this matter. The ascetic Moggallana explained this matter to me in exactly the same terms and phrases that Master Gotama used. It is wonderful, Master Gotama, it is amazing, Master Gotama, how the meaning and phrasing of both teacher and disciple coincide and agree with each other and do not diverge, that is, in regard to the chief matter. That's the end of the sutta. So this is another sutta where the Buddha answers exactly the same as his disciple. So the Buddha said that the Buddha does not have all these views because the Buddha does not regard the five aggregates or the six sense bases as the self or as belonging to the self. So that is why, because he does not have the view of a self, that's why he does not have views about the world. The next sutta is 44.8. Then the wanderer Vachagota approached the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. When they had concluded their greetings and cordial talk, he sat down to one side and said, How is it, Master Gotama? Is the world eternal? Is the world not eternal? Etc. And the Buddha said, he has not declared all this. What, Master Gotama, is the cause and reason why, when wanderers of other sects are asked such questions, they give such answers as the world is eternal, the world is not eternal, the world is finite, the world is not finite, is infinite, etc. And what is the cause and reason why Master Gotama is asked such questions, he does not give such answers? And the Buddha said, Vacha, wanderers of other sects regard the body as the self, or self as possessing body, or body as in the self, or self as in the body. Similarly, they regard feeling, perception, volition, consciousness as the self, or as belonging to the self, or in the self, or the aggregates as in the self, or the self as in the aggregates. Therefore, when the wanderers of other sects are asked such questions, they give such answers. But the Tathagata Arahant Sammasambuddha does not regard the body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness as the self, or as belonging to the self, etc. Therefore, when the Tathagata is asked such questions, he does not give such answers. Then the wanderer Vachagota rose from his seat and approached the Venerable Mahamoggallana, and he asked the same questions. And Venerable Mahamoggallana gave exactly the same answers. So, you see, because the Venerable Mahamoggallana also has psychic power like the Buddha, so he could also read this wanderer's mind. So he quoted exactly what the Buddha said. These two suttas seems to be very similar. One is regarding the six sense bases, the other one is regarding the five aggregates. 44.9. Then the wanderer Vachagota approached the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. When they had concluded their greetings and cordial talk, he sat to one side and said to the Blessed One, "In recent days, Master Gotama, a number of ascetics, Brahmanas and wanderers of various sects had assembled in the debating hall and were sitting together when this conversation arose among them. This Purana Kassapa, the leader of an order, the leader of a group, the teacher of a group, the well-known and famous spiritual guide, considered holy by many people, declares the rebirth of a disciple who has passed away and died thus. That one was reborn there. That one was reborn there. In the case of a disciple who was a person of the highest kind, a supreme person, one who had attained the supreme attainment, when that disciple had passed away and died, he also declares his rebirth thus. That one was reborn there, that one was reborn there. Similarly, this Makali Gosala, Niganta Nataputta, Sanjaya Belati Putta, Pakuda Kachayana, Ajita Kesa Kambali. When the disciple had passed away and died, they declared their rebirth thus. That one was reborn there, that one was reborn there. This ascetic Gotama, the leader of an order, the leader of a group, the teacher of a group, the well-known and famous spiritual guide, considered holy by many people, declares the rebirth of a disciple who has passed away and died thus. That one was reborn there, that one was reborn there. But in the case of a disciple who was a person of the highest kind, a supreme person, one who had attained the supreme attainment, when that disciple had passed away and died, he does not declare his rebirth thus. That one was reborn there. Rather, he declares of him, he cut off craving, severed the fetters, and by completely breaking through conceit, he has made an end to suffering. There was perplexity in me, Master Gotama, there was doubt. How is the Dhamma of the ascetic Gotama to be understood? And the Buddha said, it is fitting for you to be perplexed, Vacha. It is fitting for you to doubt. Doubt has arisen in you about a perplexing matter. I declare, Vacha, rebirth for one with fuel, not for one without fuel. Just as a fire burns with fuel, but not without fuel. So, Vacha, I declare rebirth for one with fuel, not for one without fuel. Stop here for a moment. So, unlike the other famous teachers in India at that time, the Buddha said that his highest disciples, after they pass away, they do not take rebirth because they are arahants. They have stopped the round of rebirths. So this Vacha did not understand and asked why. The Buddha says that rebirth occurs because of fuel. Just as a fire burns because of fuel. In some other suttas, the Buddha says the fuel for rebirth is greed, hatred and delusion. When you have greed, hatred and delusion, that is the cause for rebirth. And then he asked the Buddha, Master Gotama, when a flame is flung by the wind and goes some distance, what does Master Gotama declare to be its fuel on that occasion? And the Buddha said, Pacha, when a flame is flung by the wind and goes some distance, I declare that it is fueled by the wind, for on that occasion the wind is its fuel. And Master Gotama, when a being has laid down this body, but has not yet been reborn in another body, what does Master Gotama declare to be its fuel on that occasion? Pacha, when a being has laid down this body, but has not yet been reborn in another body, I declare that it is fueled by craving. On that occasion, craving is its fuel. And that's the end of the sutta. It's a very interesting sutta because of this last part. This last part, he asked the Buddha that when a being has died, but has not yet been reborn into another body. In other words, he's saying that there is what we call an intermediate body. This being has died, but has not entered the womb yet. So he's asking, why does that being still survive? What is the fuel for that being to survive? And the Buddha says it is craving, craving for rebirth, craving for existence. So that is why it exists. So it is suttas like this that makes us see that there is what we call an intermediate body. And there's another sutta also where the Buddha says that for a being to be born into the womb, it has to wait its time. And it has to wait for certain conditions before it can enter the womb. What are these conditions? The mother and the father must come together. And then the mother must be in the right season. The third condition is this being must be there waiting. And in that sutta, I think it's in the Majjhima Nikaya sutta, the Buddha calls that being the Gandhabba. The Gandhabba. This intermediate body seems like the later traditional Buddhism, they did not accept it, especially like Abhidhamma. Because if they use Abhidhamma, they cannot explain. So they don't accept this. But in the suttas, we see that this is part of the Buddha's teachings. The next sutta is 44.10. Then the wanderer Vachagota approached the Blessed One and said to him, How is it now, Master Gotama? Is there a self? Attala. When this was said, the Blessed One was silent. Then, Master Gotama, is there no self? The second time the Blessed One was silent. Then the wanderer Vachagota rose from his seat and departed. Then not long after the wanderer Vachagota had left, the Venerable Ananda said to the Blessed One, Why is it, Venerable Sir, that when the Blessed One was questioned by the wanderer Vachagota, he did not answer? And the Buddha said, If Ananda, when I was asked by the wanderer Vachagota, is there a self? If I had answered, there is a self, this would have been siding with those ascetics and brahmanas who are eternalists. And if I was asked by him, is there no self? If I had answered, there is no self, this would have been siding with those ascetics and brahmanas who are annihilationists. Stop here for a moment. The Buddha says that during his time, they had two extreme views. One is that after you die, you will exist forever and ever. This is called the eternalist view. The other extreme view is after you die, there is nothing, absolutely nothing left. This is the view of the annihilationist. So the Buddha says, if he answers there is a self, this would be siding with the eternalist. If there is no self, there will be siding with the annihilationist. If Ananda, when I was asked by the wanderer Vachagota, is there a self? I had answered, there is a self. Would this have been consistent on my part with the arising of knowledge that all phenomena are non-self? No, Venerable Sir. And if when I was asked by him, is there no self? I had answered, there is no self. The wanderer Vachagota, already confused, would have fallen into even greater confusion, thinking, it seems that the self I formerly had does not exist now. That's the end of the sutta. So, the Buddha says in the last part, if he answered, there is a self, this is contradictory to what he understands, that all phenomena, everything in the world is not self or no self. And if he had answered, there is no self, the wanderer Vacchagotta would be totally confused. He's not capable of understanding that. So the Buddha never bothered to explain. So it's like just now the two suttas we read earlier, when the Buddha was trying to describe the state of the Tathagata. To one person, he says that the Tathagata is deep, hard to fathom. So because he doesn't want to go into details, the other person would not be able to understand. So he just says the state of the Tathagata is too deep to understand, too deep to fathom. But to his own disciple, when he asks, then the Buddha explained more clearly in terms of the five aggregates. So similarly, this wanderer Vacchagotta is not capable of understanding, so the Buddha just refused to say anything to him. The last sutta in this chapter 44 is Sutta 44.11. On one occasion, the Venerable Abyakata was dwelling at Nyatika in the brick hall. Then the wanderer Vacchagotta approached the Venerable Abyakata and exchanged greetings with him. When they had concluded their greetings and cordial talk, he sat down to one side and said to him, "How is it, Master Kachana? Does the Tathagata exist after death?" And the Venerable said, the Buddha has not declared this. And then does the Tathagata not exist after death? And he says, Buddha has not declared this either. Then does the Tathagata both exist and does not exist after death? Again he says the Buddha has not declared this. Then does the Tathagata neither exist nor does not exist after death? Again he says the Buddha has not declared this. What then, Master Kachana, is the cause and reason why this has not been declared by the Blessed One? And this Venerable Sabya said, "Vacha, as to the cause and condition for describing him as consisting of form, or as formless, or as percipient, or as non-percipient, or as neither percipient nor non-percipient, if that cause and condition were to cease completely and totally without remainder, in what way could one describe him as consisting of form, or as formless, or as percipient, or as non-percipient, or as neither percipient nor non-percipient?" And then he asked, Vacha asked, "How long has it since you went forth, Master Kachana?" And Venerable Kachana said, "Not long, friend, 3 years." And Vacchagotta said, "Friend, one who has gotten so much in such a short time has indeed gotten much, not to speak of one who has surpassed this." That's the end of the sutta. So here, the Venerable Abyakata, he says, if the reason for describing the Buddha as consisting of form, okay, we take one by one. Suppose now you say the Buddha has form. So what is has a body? What's the reason or condition for saying that the Buddha has a body? Because the Buddha has got this physical flesh body, right? Now he says, if this condition, namely the flesh body, were to cease, die completely, then in what way can you describe the Buddha as consisting of body? If the body is going to die completely one day, how can you call the Buddha the body, right? And then if you say the Buddha is percipient, that means he's conscious. You say the Buddha is conscious because he has consciousness. But one day the consciousness is going to cease totally. So when the consciousness ceases totally, in what way will you describe the Buddha as having consciousness? So all these conditions by which you can describe a being or the Buddha, etc., all these conditions are impermanent. They are all going to cease totally one day. So you cannot use that to describe the Buddha. because when we say a self, atta, we mean something that is permanent, that is unchanging, that will remain forever the same. Then you can identify it as this is myself. But everything is changing, so there's nothing you can identify as the self. So this Venerable Vacchagotta, he must have renounced for a long time, maybe 20 years or something. When he heard this explanation from this young monk who had only been a monk for 3 years, he was very impressed. He said, wow, in such a short time, 3 years, you have already got so much. Then he was very, very impressed. So that's the end of this sutta. Actually, this explanation by the Venerable Sabbya is very good. You go back and think about it. All these conditions that we describe ourselves. You have body, you have feeling, you have perception, you have volition, and all that. And all these conditions are impermanent. They're going to cease totally one day. So how can you use it to describe yourself? So this happens to be the last sutta in that book 4. Book 4. So tomorrow we'll go to the last book of the Samyutta Nikaya, book 5. Book 5 is quite interesting, but I'll talk about it tomorrow. So anything to discuss? Oh yeah.
So what you were saying for 9 days
Okay. This intermediate body is not for all rebirths. This intermediate body is only for the case of a being that is going to take rebirth in a womb. That means a being that is going to be reborn as a human being or as an animal. Has to go into the womb. So for it to go into the womb, the egg must be fertilized. The egg must be fertilized. Then only the consciousness can descend into that fertilized egg. So for the egg to fertilize, there are 3 conditions. First, for the birth to take place, there are 3 conditions. First, the mother and father must come together. And then the mother must be in the right season. That means the egg must be there. And then this being is waiting to enter the womb is there. So these 3 conditions. Now, how long it takes for him to wait to enter that womb is not mentioned in our Theravada original suttas. The Buddha only said that has to wait for the mother and father to come together. Then only when the egg is fertilized, then it can enter. So only for these 2. And we know in our early suttas there are 5 destinations of rebirth. Heavenly beings, human beings, ghosts, animal and hell beings. Out of these 5, only this human and animal rebirth, that being has to wait. For the other 3, is immediate rebirth. In heaven as a ghost and in hell. In fact, hell is stated very clearly that when a being dies and his karma is going to bring him to hell, the hell beings will come up and drag him down to hell. What we say, ngao thao ma min, gu thao be bin, does exist. Hell beings.
Okay, another question. For example, somebody is very big that maybe for many days or what. Then if somebody is going to push the body, will be outside or when the body affects, will it be outside or will it be still in the same, even when somebody pushing or
It depends on his samadhi, how deep is his samadhi. In the suttas, it is mentioned that one day a layman was praising an external ascetic. I'm not sure which one. He said, this external ascetic, he was in deep samadhi. And then the king brought 500 soldiers passed by the road, making a lot of noise, these horses going, the horse carriage and everything. And this ascetic was sitting under the tree, and the king and 500 soldiers passed by. He didn't even know. He was in samadhi, he didn't even know. So he praised this ascetic to the Buddha. And the Buddha asked him, is this better? Or the Buddha said, at one time the Buddha was meditating in a hut in the forest. And then a storm arose, a big storm arose. And a lot of trees fell down. And lightning struck and all these things, strong winds. And so many trees fell down that a number of cows were killed, cows and buffaloes were killed. And then after the big storm, a lot of villagers came out and tried to clear the road and clear the damage done and all that. So the Buddha happened to come out of the hut and asked them, what happened? Why so many people around here? And they said, there was a big storm. Where were you? They asked the Buddha. The Buddha said, I was in the hut. And they said, how come you were in the hut? You didn't know there was a big storm? The Buddha said, I was meditating. So the Buddha asked the man, which is better, not to hear the big storm or not to hear the 500 soldiers go by. So your samadhi, depending on how deep it is, that is different. So probably if you are in the first jhana, somebody comes and gives you a slap, maybe you make it out of your first jhana. But if you are in the fourth jhana, probably give you a slap, you may not come out of the fourth jhana. But in the highest state, the cessation of perception and feeling, if you enter that state and they come and see you, you see your breath has stopped, your heartbeat has stopped, and they think you are dead. There's a case in the suttas about the previous Buddha, one of the previous Buddha, the disciple, I think his name was Sanjiva, I think meaning come back to life. He was meditating in the deep forest alone, and he had entered this cessation of perception and feeling, where all his consciousness stopped. And then these villagers, they went to the forest to look for wood and look for this and look for that, and they saw him. And then when they found that his breath had stopped, his heart had stopped, they assumed that he was dead. So they thought, we'll give him a proper send-off. So they found a lot of dry wood, piled all the wood on top of him and burned the thing. And they thought, give him a proper cremation. The next morning, he went on alms round in the village. They got a shock. They thought his ghost came. Then they found that he survived the big flame. So you see, when he enters the cessation of perception and feeling, even a big fire also cannot harm him. So probably didn't even harm his robes also, because otherwise he would have gone naked into the town.
So, Bhante, there is a possibility that, like for example, a lay person, they meditate at home, then for very long hours, and somebody open the door and see that they have been meditating for so long, and when he feels the breath and goes away, so they call an ambulance. So when the ambulance came, they checked and they thought that they paid. So they will bring them back to the hospital, right? So but then they were see, when it was Samadhi was sitting, so they will take the leg to straighten it so that they can bring it to hospital, meet at that stage, there won't be any
that depends on his his samadhi, and also, before I came to Buddhism, I was practicing Hinduism for about 4 years. So I read about one of the Indian saints. When he was young, maybe because of his previous life, being able to enter samadhi, sometimes when he sleeps, he goes into a very deep sleep. So his friends come and disturb him, he's not aware, you know. They tease him and slap him and all that, also he's not aware. So that has to do with the previous life.
Okay, for example, you use a needle and put him because right. Normally the ambulance will use the needle to get. You know, when first time there isn't any you will get like an time now. So normally when moving this, does it affect the samadhi? That means they use the needle to pump.
If he's in a deep samadhi, it will not affect him. He's not aware of his body. I would think so. But generally, it's hard to find lay person who can attain that type of samadhi. Very rare. If he can attain that type of samadhi, he won't stay as a lay person. According to the Buddha's words, definitely he won't stay as a lay person. Now we don't talk about specific cases. I don't know.
Revulsion. You start the practice again when we come back again to encourage to get revulsion and action. So you get that big stage in terms of the Nikaya. You reach a stage whereby the person will obviously renounce the things, renounce the world and perhaps live a spiritual life. For example, and just one day at Gita, I presume that you would have attained a certain level of revulsion and distraction towards the world, but you really see as a renounce, even the person. So I just wonder what makes me not renounce the world or make an expectation.
You see, somebody like Chitta, even though he's not considered a renunciant, but I believe that the life he leads is very similar to a renunciant. So, because he has already seen the Dhamma and being an anagamin, he's not interested in worldly affairs. Probably his business and all that, he leaves to the wife to run. Leaves to the wife to run the home and all that. And then he just considers his room to be like a cave. And he hides himself in the room the whole day or most of the time. Except maybe when it's time to do dana to the monks, he'll come out and do dana. So a person who can attain even the first sotapanna, he would already have some revulsion. This word revulsion, you can say disenchantment, you can say wearied of the world, xian liao, ya liao, im jo. No more chasing after anything interesting in the world. No more interested to go and see Gua Tempurung.
That means because human form of practice has to meet who we go to because for a father, the mother and so for some specific people, human form see that who the parents will be is estimated.
This one I can't tell you. I can't tell you. You see, like, you can think of various possibilities. Say, suppose, like, you take a plane, you go overseas on a holiday or something, and then your plane crashes, and then you die there. But say you die in America, but the people you have affinity with is in Malaysia. whether your, what you call soul or whatever there, can come back to Malaysia. Interesting, huh? But this, there are some people, like this Professor Ian Stevenson, has written a book, done a lot of research about reincarnation. It's written a small booklet, and the other person, I think it's Francis Story or something like that. Francis Story or Abyakata Baptist, written about rebirth. And when they hear that a person remembers their past life, they go and question him. So it seems there was one case of a person, he remembered that when he died, he took form of a small being, a few inches only. And he didn't know where to go. And then he saw his funeral, everything. After that he was wandering around, he didn't know where to go for a few days. Then one day he saw somebody whom he recognized to come from the sister's house. That person maybe went to market or something and is going home with the basket. And then this being, he jumped into that basket and it seems he was reborn as the sister's son. So, that's what he remembers. So, it's interesting.
Bhante, you mentioned about Abyakata. So for conceptions to take place, consciousness must be very different. So how do you differentiate the Gandhabba and the consciousness?
The Gandhabba, I can consider it to be a kind of being, because the Buddha says that when you have a being with consciousness, it must come together with the five aggregates. You cannot have consciousness without the five aggregates. So it's actually a being. But because it's a temporary being, the Buddha does not classify it as one of the five destinations of rebirth, because it's only temporary, maybe only for a few days or for a few weeks, and then it will enter the womb. So it has consciousness. So when it enters the fertilized egg, in the sutta they call it the descent of consciousness. Descent of consciousness into that egg. So once it descends into that egg, then it will have the six senses. Then it's aware. It's an egg in the womb. It's aware of the surroundings. So when that egg, that fertilized egg, when the consciousness enters, that is become a being already. So if you, after that, if you perform an abortion, that's a killing of a human being.
They observe not eating after midday, and they also practice not using honey. But whereas some this woman is any time of the day, actually one of monks.
Are you talking about monks? Monks and nuns?
Whereas some they don't practice eat exactly afternoon activity, so they go about having supper and whatnot, and then enjoy those activity and all those things. So something wrong with the separation within the tradition.
I think that rotten monks and nuns, they are present in all traditions and in all religions. So that cannot be helped, the rotten eggs. But the motive of a person wearing the robe is very important. There are some people, they wear the robe as a means of livelihood, so that they have an easy life, they don't have to work. People just bring food to them, they don't have to slog so hard, and sometimes they get very good offerings. although like in the different sects of Buddhism, this is found, but there are certain sects where it's more pronounced. For example, like in Chinese Buddhism. In Chinese Buddhism, because the peculiarity about Chinese Buddhism is that the monks and the nuns have been forced by the Emperor of China in the year 511 to become vegetarians. So after they became vegetarians, they found that they have to cook themselves, they have to look for money to buy food, because they are not able to go on alms round. Once they become vegetarians, it's not practical to go on alms round. Nobody's going to provide you with vegetarian food. So then, as a result of taking vegetarian food, they found that at night they get hungry, because vegetarian food digests very easily, and even you take breakfast and lunch, by night you get hungry already, unlike taking of meat. It's generally true that most Mahayana monks and nuns, probably 90% of them or more, they eat at night. And sometimes they eat openly also. They even go for dinner with lay people and eat from the same dishes and all that, which is not allowed by the Vinaya. So because of relaxing the rules, they find that that's the danger with relaxing the rules. Once you start relaxing one rule, then you relax another, and very soon you are not able to keep any rule, because people take for granted that these are not important. So that's why they start talking about 方便法门. Expedient means, provisional means. The problem is 方便法门 becomes 随便法门. Anything boleh, anything can do. So that's the problem. And this vegetarian practice is not a Mahayana practice. It is a Han Chuan Fo Jiao. It's peculiar only to Chinese Buddhism, because you have other branches of Mahayana Buddhism, like Tibetan Buddhism. They don't practice vegetarianism. So it's only peculiar to China and those places like Vietnam, because they are influenced by China, then also or South Korea. So that's the thing.
During the Bhante channel, we don't see the Mahayana and the Theravada, they live together in the same monastery, together and learn from each other together. At that time, there was a lot of learning. According to the Theravada Vinaya is that we don't practice the same Vinaya, we don't eat together or live together in the same situation. I would presume that we will say they do practice the same standard.
But hard to say because that was long after the Buddha passed away, whether they actually kept the Vinaya or not. We don't know. But like in Tibetan Buddhism, a lot of external sect practices have crept into Tibetan Buddhism, because Tibetan Buddhism started only 1,200 years after the Buddha passed away. So things like Tantric Buddhism, which comes from Tantra Yoga, where the master and the disciple can make love and all these things, it's taught in the teachings, but it's totally against the Buddha's Vinaya. So this is one of the things that caused the downfall of Buddhism in India. So the Buddha always stressed that we have to uphold the Vinaya and practice the Dhamma. That's why the Dhamma Vinaya is our teacher. So you cannot say that you want to practice part of the Buddha's teachings, you don't want to practice another part. So that will cause the disappearance of the true Dhamma. And unfortunately, all these wrong practices and wrong teachings are not peculiar to one sect. They are found in all forms of Buddhism, even Theravada Buddhism. Theravada Buddhism now is also very much corrupted by later books like the commentaries and Abhidharma and all that. So that nowadays people don't talk about attaining the jhanas. But in the Buddha's time, the jhanas extremely important. It can amount to stealing if they did not give her permission and they are not happy that she took those things. But you see, that's the danger of some people. Instead of following the Buddha's instructions and depending on the Buddha's wisdom to guide us, some people, they want to use their own wisdom. They think they are very smart. But they are not smart. The Buddha wanted monks and nuns to rely on lay people for their food so that the lay people would have a means of getting blessings, merit. That's why in the monk's Vinaya, it's not allowed for a monk to go deep into the forest and live like, for example, a Hindu ascetic and live off the roots of the trees or live off the fruits and all that and survive in the deep jungle. The Buddha did not allow that. The Buddha said a monk must come out and beg for his food. After getting your food, if you want, you can go into the deep forest to meditate. But every day you have to come out and beg for your food. That's because the Buddha wants the lay people and the monks and nuns to interact so that they benefit each other.
I think in this case, because the Mahayana nun doesn't go for Amazon, she doesn't accept Anna.
If she had studied the Buddha's words in the earliest Nikayas and in the Vinaya, she would not come to that conclusion, because she didn't study, so probably she thought she was doing the right thing. In fact, we find in the suttas, sometimes external ascetics, they are very proud of their teaching, they are very proud of their sect, of their religion and all that. They come and argue with the Buddha. And then they argue with the Buddha, and finally the Buddha defeat them and convince them of the Buddha's teachings. Then they realize, what they realize? They realize, they thought that they were monks before. They said now they realize they were not monks before. They thought they were practicing the holy life, but now they realize they were not practicing the holy life. So you see, sometimes you use your own wisdom. You think you are doing the right thing, you are doing the wrong thing. That's why it's very important to rely on the wisdom of a Sammasambuddha. That's why sometimes people come and learn from a teacher. They are not willing to give up their own preconceived ideas. They think they are smarter than the teacher. That's the problem. When you learn from a teacher, you have to give up some of your views. Like the Buddha says in the sutta, the Buddha told one of his disciples, when you come to learn, you must always have the view that the teacher knows more than me. Otherwise, no point to follow your teacher. You go on your own. You think a person that thinks is smart enough, no need to follow a teacher. You go on your own. So in the same way, when we are disciples of the Buddha, when the person renounces, he's called the son of the Sakyan, Sakyaputta. So we must always follow the Buddha's instructions, not like this nun. In fact, in the later, several hundred years after the Buddha passed away, people who use their own thinking, they start creating new teachings, and they call it expedient teachings, Pangpian Famen and all that, which is basically what Mahayana Sutras are about. They create things like Guanyin Pusa. And why do they create things like Guanyin Pusa and Omitofo? Because they think it's difficult for ordinary people to practice a spiritual path, very difficult to meditate, very difficult to keep the precepts and all these things. So you have this Pangpian Famen where you can pray to Guanyin for help. And they think that is bringing people into Buddhism so that slowly they can follow the Buddha. But that's a silly way of thinking, because once they come into Buddhism with this Kuan Yin and Amitabha Buddha in their mind, they will cling to it, they will never give up. They are not going to change from Kuan Yin to become great meditator. No, they will cling on to Kuan Yin. So the Buddha, from the very beginning, the Buddha never compromised on such things. The Buddha always taught the essence of the holy life. Even it's difficult to do also, the Buddha said we should follow because that is necessary. You see? So if we want an easy way, I always say, cheap things are not good, good things are not cheap. Okay. Yeah. He is going back tomorrow, must ask this question.
Because the word Buddha, I think what also we refer to the monk as Buddha.
Okay, yeah.
So, is the word Buddha refer to our ladies or after we refer to the monks as Buddha?
Can. Because in the suttas, the Buddha says there are 9 types of beings in the world, only 9 types of beings. The first one is the Putujana. Putujana means an ordinary worldling. And then after that are 8 Aryans. The 8 Aryans are the first path, first fruit, second path, second fruit, third path, third fruit, fourth path, fourth fruit. So if you have not attained any Aryan stage, that person will be a Putujana. Doesn't matter whether he's a monk or a nun or a lay person. If he has not become an Arya, he is a Putujana. So that will include all the beings in hell, all the beings in the ghost realm, all the beings in the animal realm, and most of the human beings, and most of the Devas and Devis. Oh yeah. Most of them are Putujana. That's why when they come across an Arya or Arahant, they have great respect. Okay, stop here for tonight.